So
while creating the
actually this type of constructor, when you create the when you created that constructor, sorry, when you create that object, then only you have to using this constructor. Without that constructor you cannot be created any object. So and previous actually dog. Okay, so in that where you have to discuss that dog example, where you have to
last class,
that dog example. You forgot that? Huh? Method. When we are using that method, then only it can be created. So, so this constructor actually, like you are seeing method only. Yes, this is the constructor, and this is also your like this method also. And previous previous and so many methods you have to create it. What type of methods you have to create it? Withdraw and deposit and
Deposit,
yeah,
withdraw.
yes,
Mm.
check balance. So in those operation purpose and those functionality purpose, you have to using the methods. Okay, so when you're seeing this constructor parenthesis, yes, on the time also you have to create a the top that user defined text can and parenthesis you have to using in the side of that method also. Okay, but here also in the same name and parenthesis and method also, the different type of names, use defined names and parenthesis. How can you differentiate that method and constructor? This is a very most important actually. Okay, so in this method actually what you have to functioning in that method, that name only you have to represent it in that method creation. Okay, here when you're creating that constructor actually that name totally depending on that class name only. What you have to use in that class creation, that name only you have to using in this constructor. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, without that class name, when you're using any other names, for example class name is the constructor. For example, when you create that what is that constructor, so in that purpose you have to create or you have to assign in that only class name. Without the using of that class name, here you have to using constructor, so that problem or that error it can be find out. Okay, so in the same way here the very most important is that and method side, when you're creating that method side, that class name you are not assigning any method name. Okay, that user defined, so which function it can be there in that block code. So when you're creating that method also is a block code instructions in created, and constructor also can be created that block code. This one also block code, and that one method also it can be using that block code. For method, if you want to create that method actually, when you're creating, after the creating of that object, you have to using that methods. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, in actually in that method actually, whenever you after the creation of that method, after the creation of object, then you have to using the method. Okay, after the creation of that object, you have to using the method only. But here, what is that? Whenever you creating that object on the time only, you have to using that constructor. Like here, for example, here you have to using that public. It is shareable my screen. Yes, public
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Yes.
class, for example constructor. This is the class actually. Okay, so when you are creating this class automatically, and before the creation of that object, then only you have to create a class. Is it right? Okay, so
Yes, sir.
Yes.
yes, in the same program and previous, you have to using the some of the programs in that time. In the beginning, you are created any object?
No,
No,
sir.
sir.
No, but before that object, you cannot create any class. After the creation of object only, you have to create that class. Is it right?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
How it can be executed that classes in previous programs? Already I shows that information also. When you're creating that class in Eclipse, in that options, when you're creating that options, and some of the options it can be there, it can be asking that class name, object name, that Java, that Eclipse, it automatically, before that creating of that class, it can be asking, or a default, it can be assigning that object. Did you observe that one? I have to share one. I have to share. See here. Here, constructor is there, and here only just you have to use that class. See here, it is asking that name. Yes, super class. What is that super class? That is the object. Here or automatically it can be assigning that java.lang.object. Is it right? So whenever you assigning that name, class name, then automatically that Eclipse, or it can be assigning that default superclass that is called a object. Okay. So whenever you here, just you have to select that public, and then create whenever you assigning this one class something, then it can be given a finish. What is that? Um, huh? It is not. It is not shareable my screen. Huh? Okay. Right. Right. So in the time only, whenever you assigning that class name, then automatically that Eclipse it can be assigning that creating that object. That is the parent object. That is the super class. That is the super class only. In the under the super class, under the object only, you have to create it that class. It is okay, right? So that is the before and previous programs also, you have to create it that only that Eclipse it can be created that default object. Okay, so here whenever you after the creation of main method in previous programs, after the creation of that main method, you have to call the methods, and those are all things. Is it right? Hello?
Sir.
Respond. Is it right? After the creation of the,
Sir.
sorry, what, which method? Main method, public static void main. Yes? Can
Yes,
you
sir.
Sir.
imagine that one? Huh? Hello?
Sir.
Can you imagine that one?
Sir.
What I am saying? Can you imagine that one? See here. For example, here one program is there, for example. See here. See here. And before the creation of that main method, before the using of that main method, you have to declare that object, what is that, variables. Did you observe this one? Huh?
Yes,
It is
sir.
visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Before that creating of that main method, you have to using the, or you have to create it what is that, variables. Okay, so in these variables, after the creation of that main method, you have to calling in under that method only. Is it right? Did you understand my point? After
Yes,
the
sir.
creation of that main method, you have to call the variables. Did you understand? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Respond. When I am asking that question, whenever you're responding, then I have to decide. So this is received that students, these are all things. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Here, when you after the creation of that main method, you have to call the variables. So how can you call that variables? Just before that calling, just you have to use the object. See, here you have to create the object. How can you create the object? That object name first, it is that first you have to use the class name only. How can you create that? Just a while. Here, first you have to create the class name only. What is that? What is the class?
Constructor.
Constructor.
Sir, class name should start with the capital letter, right, sir?
Here we are not using any capital letter. This is the only class name. Okay, of course, if you want to use the capital letter, just you have to use that capital letter. Without the using of that starting letter and capital letter, then only it can be executed. Okay, so correct. This is the class name. Then you have to what you have to using that variable only. After the using of that class name, just you have to assign the name. What is that? Variable name. Yes, variable.
I.
For example, in here, just you have to assign that AB or AD. What you have to interested that variable, just you have to assign. Okay, just I have to given that AB. Okay, then after the assigning that variable, just you have to use the equal to operator. Equal to operator. So after the given that operator, then you have to use the keyword. What you have to use that keyword? New, exactly, very good. New, and then constructor, very good. So constructor name
Class
should
name.
be follows the constructor name should be follows the class name.
Class.
Okay, class name in
Uh,
here. If you want to use that any other name, for example Ramesh, for example Raju, or for example any ABC, if you want to assigning like that names, you have to assigning for that. So if it is created that constructor,
No, sir.
no, because of that is not a rule actually. What is that rule actually? If you want to create a constructor, that constructor, it can be follows the only class name, and that's why here
Class name.
should be use the constructor. Constructor, then how it can be constructor? Parenthesis. Okay, so this is the object creation. Object creation. So in that object creation, when you're assigning that class name, here you have to use the only class name and parenthesis. That is a like a, what is that? Constructor. Okay, and
Constructor.
here two type of constructors is there. One is the um, explicitly constructor and implicitly constructor, and two type of constructors. Okay, so how you assigning that, how you creating that constructors and implicity and explicity constructors, those are all, it depends on parenthesis, parameters. Depends on parameters. Just you have to go that eclipse. Okay, it is shareable my screen, it is visible.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes.
Eclipse. Eclipse not shareable, sir.
Eclipse, it is not visible. Okay, right, it is okay.
Ah,
Right. All right. So here, just you have to use this. Um, public class constructors. Okay, constructors using the curling bracket, and here just you have to use the main method. Just you have to create the main method. Okay, here just you have to create a object. Okay, for example, after the creation of that main method, just you have to create a main what is that method. So in that's why constructors space, what you have to mention here,
Int, sir. Int.
Variable. Okay, ab variable, for example, just to use that operator, and
New.
keyword and
Constructor. Class name.
that is the
Constructors.
constructor. Very good, that is the constructor. Okay, so okay, so here just I have to using this one, just you have to create that constructor. ఏంటి ఏంటది ఏబి ఎక్కడ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ అనేటువంటిది క్లాస్ నేమే ఇవ్వాలి. ఇటు పక్కన ఎందుకని మనం యూజ్ చేసాము కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ అనేటువంటి దాన్ని, మనం ఎందుకనంటే కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ అనేటువంటిది ఆబ్జెక్ట్ నేమ్. Here it is not a created that constructor. Here why we are using this constructor, why we are creating this constructor, the creating the object to the purpose of creating object. In that's why you have to using this constructor. Okay, here it is created that constructor or object only. Here see here ఇక్కడ మనం ఏదైతే ఇక్కడ యూజ్ చేస్తున్నామో ఈ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ అనేటువంటిది దేనికోసం యూజ్ చేసాం యాక్చువల్గా,
క్రియేట్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్
క్రియేట్ చేయడం కోసం యూజ్ చేసాం, అదేనా. బట్ ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ క్రియేటెడ్ ఫర్ ద కన్స్ట్రక్టర్. ఓకే, బట్ దిస్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ క్రియేటింగ్ ఫర్ ద ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఓన్లీ. Okay, if you want to create it this constructor, then automatically it created a object. Okay, so here if you want to create that constructor, here only you have to using the public constructors. It is clear? Public.
sir.
So here you have to using this public constructor. This constructor actually different type of constructors also it can be using that. What type of constructors you have to using? What type of constructors? Explicit, implicit constructors. So explicit constructor and implicit constructor, implicit constructor is a default constructors. That a default constructor, you are not created the default constructors. Okay, so that is the implicit constructor. So whenever you here, for example, here whenever you assigning this object name, that object name should be there in that class name. Okay, So class name already that name you have to using that class name. In that way you have to assigning that object name also and constructor name also. But here you have to using this constructor. But in before the starting of that program, you cannot be created any constructor. How it can be functioning? Do you understand my point? Online.
No, sir.
Here you have to create that constructor. Okay. For example, here
Ah,
ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఈస్ దేర్ ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్. సో ఈ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ అనేటువంటి దాన్ని ఎక్కడ మీరు క్రియేట్ చేసుకున్నారు, ఎక్కడి నుంచి యూజ్ చేస్తున్నారు ఈ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ అనేటువంటిది? బై ది యూజింగ్ ఆఫ్ ద
class.
by the using of the class name only
Class.
created this object. Okay, so this object actually depending on that class. Is it right?
Sir.
Yes. Here indirectly you have to using that constructor. Okay. In this program, that constructor, it is not available in your program. Here it not at all you have to you cannot be using that constructor, but you have here you have to assigning that constructor. అవునా? ఈ ప్రోగ్రామ్ అనేటువంటి దానిలో ఈ కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ అనేటువంటిది ఎక్కడ అవైలబుల్ లేదు, కానీ ఇక్కడ మీరు న్యూగా కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ అనేటువంటి దాన్ని కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ చేస్తున్నారు. అవునా? అసైన్ చేస్తున్నారు. అవునా? ప్రీవియస్ మీకు ఎక్కడైనా ఒకవేళ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ అనేటువంటి దాన్ని ఉన్నట్లయితే ఆ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ని తీసుకుని వచ్చి అప్పుడు ఇక్కడ మీరు ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేసేటువంటి దానిలో అసైన్ చేయడానికి ఉంటుంది. అవునా కదా? బట్ దిస్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ అవైలబుల్ ఇన్ యువర్ ప్రోగ్రామ్. ఇస్ ఇట్ రైట్? హలో,
Sir. Sir.
is it right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, exactly. But so here you have to using how it can be possible that constructing creating that object, how it can be helping that constructor that creating of that object, in the sense that Java, that is the advantage of that Java. Okay, so whenever you're creating that object in default, that constructor it can be created in the backside of that Java. Okay. Hello, did you understand my point?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, very good. So that is the thing actually. So here in the using of this constructor, the before that constructor you cannot be using or you cannot be created or you cannot be what is that developing in your program actually that constructor. But here when you are creating that object, you have to assigning this constructor. Okay, why? Because this constructor actually in backside the defaulted predefined or defaulted that Java, it can be created that constructor. When you are creating the class, when you are creating the class, then only the Java it can be created that constructor. Created the constructor. So whenever it is creating that constructor, so that constructor you have to here you have to assigning this for the creation of object. అర్థమైందా? ఆ క్లాస్ క్రియేట్ చేసినప్పుడు ఏదైతే జావా అనేటువంటిది క్రియేట్ చేసిందో ఆ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ అనేటువంటి దాన్ని, ఆ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ని ఇక్కడ మనం ఏం చేస్తున్నాం, ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేయడానికి అలౌట్ చేస్తున్నాం. అర్థమైందా? సో దిస్ టైప్ ఆఫ్ క్రియేషన్ ఆఫ్ దట్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ ఈజ్ ఏ implicity constructor. That is a default constructor. To whom to created that constructor? To whom to created that constructor? Java only. That Java only it can be created. Whenever you write the constructor or whenever you creating that constructor in your program, then that Java it can be stopped that automatically created that constructor. Whenever you try to creating that constructor, then that Java in backend, default creation it can be stopped. Why? Because when you start the creating of that constructor, it can be knows that Java it can be knows that user or the developer they have to be personally it can be created that constructor. That's why that Java it cannot be created. That is the advantage of the Java. Clear my point? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, clear this my point actually. So here you have to use this and different type of constructors. I have to show that just you have to here just you have to create it that constructor. Then one moment constructor, and here also you have to create it this constructor, and here just you have to use that what is that actually, just you have to create a SOP system dot out dot println. Okay, and here just you have to assign that cp dot I, for example. Okay, here you have to, you could not be created that variable also. One moment, cp one moment. See this program. Okay, here you have to create one constructor. Okay, and here also you have to create this one constructor. Just leave it this one. Okay, so this is the default constructor. Okay, so just you have to, here you are not created that constructor, here only you have to created that object only. Is it right? It is visible my screen? Yes. Right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. Here you have to create that user. Okay, that user personally created that constructor. So that constructor, whenever you execute this construction, see, let I delete this one actually. Okay, just you have to execute this one. Yes, 20. It can be get a output. How it can be get a output in the sense, for example, here you have to create a object for the calling of variable. Yes, hello. Why we are using this object? Why we are creating this object? What purpose you have to creating this object? For the calling of variable. అవునా కదా? ఈ యొక్క ఆబ్జెక్ట్ అనేటువంటిది ఎందుకు క్రియేట్ చేస్తున్నాము? ఈ వేరియబుల్ని కాల్ చేయడం కోసం క్రియేట్ చేసాం, అవునా కదా? సో ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ క్రియేటింగ్ ఫర్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్, ఇట్ క్రియేటింగ్ ఫర్ ఓన్లీ కాలింగ్ టు వేరియబుల్ ఓన్లీ. స్ట్రింగ్స్తో వేరియబుల్ని కాల్ చేయడం కాదు. స్ట్రింగ్ అనేటువంటిది దేనికోసం యూజ్ చేస్తున్నాము? ఫర్ ది అలోటింగ్ ఆఫ్ మెమరీ, for allowing the memory, for the assigning of memory. అదేనా? సో ఆబ్జెక్ట్ అనేటువంటి దాన్ని ఎందుకు క్రియేట్ చేస్తున్నాం? వై యు ఆర్ క్రియేటింగ్ ఆఫ్ దట్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్? ఫర్ ది అలౌయింగ్ ఆఫ్ మెమరీ. అదేనా? దేనికోసం మెమరీని అలౌ చేస్తున్నాము? క్లాస్ కోసం. అదేనా? ఒకసారి చూడండి, ఆబ్జెక్ట్ అనేటువంటి దాన్ని క్రియేట్ చేసేది దేనికోసం అని అంటే, when you are creating that object, okay, so for you have to assigning the memory only, you have to assigning the memory for the classes, for the classes. So without the creating of that object, how can you assigning how can you creating that classes? Why? Because Why? Because here that classes are okay. Okay, the classes creating purpose, you have to use the memory. Okay, so but here that class creation purpose, you cannot be assigning any memory. Okay, so I have to share that my screen actually. Paint, just you have to observe here. Here I want to create a, see here, it is visible my screen, paint screen. Yes, so this is an object actually. The inside of that object, it can be have the classes only. Is it right? Here classes only, class and number of classes you have to develop in that